My name is Lisa Keller. I am president of Autism National Committee, otherwise known as AUTCOM. And I welcome everybody to our third and final webinar of 2023 called A Very Sibling Thing. I forgot the rest of the title, but anyway, we hope that you will you'll enjoy this one as much as the past two that we've had. The first one was discussing autism from the autistic person's viewpoint. The second one was from the parents' viewpoint, and now we're talking to siblings. Okay. I want to let you know that if you have specific questions for the panelists, you can use the Q&A feature on your screen. I will be using the questions from that particular feature to give them to Max in case he can't see them. So the other, if you care to talk to each other, you can certainly use the chat feature, but don't use that for specific questions. So without further ado, I want to introduce Maxfield Sparrow, they, them. Max is the author of The ABCs of Autism Acceptance, Autonomous Press, 2016, and editor of Spectrum's Autistic Transgender People in Their Own Words. Max is autistic and works with neurodivergent clients as a direct support professional and supported employment specialist. Max travels the country with his emotional support cat, Mr. Kitty. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Max.
Hello, everybody. I'm Max, and I have these panelists, these wonderful panelists, and I do not know what order we're going in. I'm feeling very, very unprepared, but everything's going to go great. I have questions, and I am going to introduce each panelist before they answer the first question so that it will be easier for you to connect the person to their bio. And we're going to go through the first question and then go back around again with each question. Panelists can interact with each other. If there's something that another panelist says that you'd like to respond to, please do. And we will start with Susmita. Susmita Kurup is the sister of Sujit Kurup. She says, I am older than him by 7 years. I am currently a software engineer at Microsoft, and I live and work in the Seattle metropolitan area in Washington state. I completed my master's in computer engineering at Syracuse University, New York. Sujit and I have a close sibling bond, and whenever we visit each other, we do a lot of activities together, like hiking, watching movies, reading books, and traveling and exploring new places. Susmita, the first question I have for you is, what communication and/or interaction challenges did you experience with your autistic sibling?
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you, Max, for the introduction. Yeah, so my brother Sujit is nonverbal, and growing up, that was always a bit of a challenge for communication. And before we all moved to the US and learned about facilitated communication, I didn't really realize how much Sujit understood what I said and how much he wanted to communicate. And growing up, he was very hyperactive and always running around and doing his own thing. And I was a homebody, quiet and staying in one place. So we never really communicated as such. Most of our interactions were very playful, where I would sing songs for him or draw shapes with him and paint with him. And as a small kid, Sujit never spoke any words at all. But even with all of our communication challenges, it was during one of my interactions with him that he started parroting words that I said. And that moment like still makes me feel very proud and accomplished, because he's been continuing to do that even today, even though it was completely accidental on my part. Things have changed a lot since like we moved to the US and learned about facilitated communication. I was like absolutely blown away by all the thoughts he expressed through typing, and I could finally see how intelligent and talented he is. And we now communicate through typing, and I've learned so much more about him. And although we are like 3,000 miles apart, like we do talk to each other many times a week through video calls.
That's magnificent. Thank you. The next panelist I would like to introduce is Sean Burke. Sean Burke is the younger brother of Jamie Burke. He is 34 years old. And is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And is a senior engineer technician for New York State Department of Transportation. He lives in Syracuse, New York. His interests are much like Jamie's, being at the family camp at Lake Ontario and activities on the water, hiking, and cooking. Sean, I would like to ask you the same question. What communication and/or interaction challenges did you experience with your autistic sibling?
Well, growing up with Jamie, being the youngest of the brothers, I kind of, was a little bit behind, being a little bit younger. But as I started growing up, coming into my childhood youth, start picking up on things that I was, able to have conversations and with my parents, and realizing my brother, didn't have this ability. And it was kind of hard to wrap my head around at first. Couldn't fathom why I could ask my parents, can we have this for dinner? And my older brother couldn't. So that was, tough for me to wrap my head around initially. But then started realizing, that it, was due to autism. And I could see that he had this urge to communicate. You could tell, you see it through other expressions and different emotions, just not verbally. And it was a matter of time before I started realizing my mom using facilitated communication with just the old laminated, QWERTY, keyboard, if you will. And, slowly watching that progress, started getting a grasp of, okay, he can communicate. It's just, through a different avenue. And that was a little bit challenging to try to, just wrap my young brain around, like, why can I speak? Why can he not? Just, that was probably the biggest challenge for me growing up, until I, was bestowed the information about facilitated communication and what avenues all that can open up for people who don't have the ability to communicate like most of us. But I would say that was probably the biggest challenge growing up for me with him. But then it was just, like I said, one thing led to another, and I'll get down to those responses in later questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Debra Karhson. Dr. Debra S. Karhson is an assistant professor of psychology and heads the Brains in Learning and Social Synchrony, or BLISS, lab at the University of New Orleans. Her research examines the role of the endocannabinoid system in the neurobiological mechanisms of social functioning in autism spectrum disorder. The long-term goal of her lab is to define how best to leverage a nuanced understanding of the neurobiological mechanisms of social synchrony in humans to improve the quality of life of autistic people. Debra, what communication and/or interaction challenges did you experience with your autistic sibling?
Hi, thanks for having me, you guys. Sorry I didn't include any information about my brother. He's older than me. I try, unless I have his explicit consent, I don't release personal information about him, but he's my older brother by 7 years. And I'm not going to tell you his age or his name, sorry, because he didn't give me consent to do that. We, as a family, learned, so he's one of 5. There are 5 of us all together as children. and my two parents, and we have all learned ASL. And since we grew up in Texas, it's like a mishmash of ASL and signed exact English. So we have used that to communicate, and then just like a lot of mix of like home signs. Growing up, I don't know, like my brother was just my brother. So like the way he existed was the way he existed. And it wasn't something I questioned. I thought it was, I mean, I also had the benefit of going to a school that at the same time as having neurotypical human beings had people who were neurodivergent and had a lot of other disabilities. So I just thought everybody in the world just like lived like that. Like everybody was like a mishmash of like different bodies, different abilities and stuff. It wasn't until I left that space after the 8th grade where I realized, I mean, like in everyday like life, you realize that like, oh yeah, I guess people don't have somebody with a disability in their life. And then that to me made other people weird, because I was like, why are you I don't know, people do weird things. So like people were like, or back in the day, but like right now, ASL is super popular. So it's like less weird if you sign it. But like back in the day, it was always also something that like wasn't a thing that people did. But because we existed in an environment that both our home and our school had people who were signing, there weren't really that many communication or interaction challenges. My brother is nonverbal as well, and deaf. So I don't know, sign language worked for us.
Thank you. That is wonderful to hear such a different upbringing from mine, and I'm sure a lot of people's. So thank you for sharing that. Next, I'd like to introduce Alan Kurtz. Alan Kurtz, PhD, recently retired from the University of Maine's Center for Community Inclusion and Disability Studies. Alan has a number of younger siblings, including his autistic brother, Bruce. Alan, what communication and/or interaction challenges did you experience with your autistic sibling?
Well, Bruce was 4 years younger than me, and he didn't develop speech. I think, you know, when I was the oldest of 5 boys in my family, he was the third. You know, it was a struggle, but I think we came to rely on his gestures and his behavior, and we tried to interpret what he was doing. This was pre 1975 passing of the law 94-142. So he wasn't in a school. Well, actually, he was. We got him into a private school for kids with significant disabilities. Excuse me. But we used to sell raffle tickets to help pay for it. It was that was, again, kids with disabilities weren't entitled then to a public education. So I mean, he didn't get a lot of things that he might have gotten in school. I think I was, among my siblings, I was probably the closest to him and probably had more interaction than the other ones. And I remember my mother sort of giving me some responsibility for that and encouraging that and telling me how important it was to, continually interact with him, which I did. We did have a fun time.
Thank you. And what a different time it was back
Mhm.
then. Absolutely. Next, I would like to introduce, tell me if I pronounce it correctly, Shehime. Is that correct? Shehime Arshad. She says, I am a hospitality professional as well as a former ski instructor and therapeutic teacher. I am currently spending much of my time managing properties and volunteering with the prison book program. I'll ask you the same question. What communication and/or interaction challenges did you experience with your autistic sibling?
So this is an interesting panel for me because my brother is also on it. So it'll be interesting to see the similarities and differences of how we grew up together. And our sister is Yasmin, who is also attending. She is she is nonverbal in the sense that she can't express all of her ideas, but she does say words. So she does verbalize. She has come late to facilitated communication only in about the past 6-7 years. In terms of growing up, she and I shared a room, so we were very, very close. Much of my life, I feel, was spent about her, around her, and around what worked for our family. It was tough at times because she would make a lot of noise, say a lot of words, but not necessarily be able, we couldn't understand what it was that she needed. So there was a feeling of helplessness. And then I think that on the flip side to that, there was also times when she would manipulate certain situations to get what she wanted. And I think that was some struggles at times. So there was this feeling of wanting to do something, but not knowing what it was to do to help her. And so coming to facilitated communication was just, it changed everything in our life, in all of our lives. And for that, I'll forever be grateful. So I would say, yeah, those are my experiences with her in the past.
Thank you. And I have to say, when you said frustrating, but also I was thinking how clever to get what she needed. That's
absolutely
very
absolutely.
impressive.
Yeah.
Again, tell me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Is it Shergul?
That's right, Shergul. Yep.
Shergul Arshad. I would like to introduce you. Shergul Arshad is the brother of talented gateway artist Yasmine Arshad, one of the assisted typers with you today. She's in the audience. Shergul hails from Florence, Italy, is married with 3 children, ages 22, 20, and 5. That's quite a gap. Shergul is the head of North America for Aston Martin Formula One and is a graduate of Harvard University. So I have the same question for you. What communication and/or interaction challenges did you experience with your autistic sibling?
So I'll jump in. Hello, everybody, and hi, Yasmine. I think the struggles that we had, I was almost 7 years old, I think, when Yasmine at age 3 started experiencing epilepsy, which led to her autistic condition. So I had a pretty clear memory as a 7-year-old of her being completely functioning and normal and verbal and very verbal. She was a chatterbox. And then it pretty much stopped overnight. And I remember the challenge was, I guess, accepting and knowing that deep down there was somebody very verbal and very interested in expressing her opinions. But then I think her inability to communicate essentially must have frustrated her more and more, because she started to bottle up, and her words became literally, with the passing months, worse and worse, to the point that, up until the beginning of assisted typing, facilitated typing, her communication had gotten really bad verbally. And the gateway was a great release for her to express herself, but we all kind of knew there was something, really wonderful. And so we would communicate through actions. For example, playing basketball or going skiing or playing board games. She loved art projects, so she liked doing things, but we didn't quite ever get an opinion. So I agree. The challenge was knowing that there was something verbal there, and then the discovery of facilitated typing, as Shehime said, really changed everything. And also, while there's incredible appreciation for the present and future, there's a lot of sadness for all the years having grown up without it.
Thank you. Thank you. Have I gotten everyone? I have gotten everyone. All right. So it's time to start back at the top of the list again with the second question. So Susmita, what did you enjoy doing with your sibling? What do you enjoy doing together now?
Okay. So Sujit and I are 7 years apart. So he was still very young when I moved out of the house to go to college. As kids, our interactions are very playful. We mostly spend time singing and painting and listening to songs together. And over the years, our hobbies and interactions have changed. I'm a complete couch potato, but Sujit has made me appreciate the outdoors a lot more. We love going on hikes and adventures together. Whenever he comes to visit me in Seattle, we would go on long drives, exploring the beautiful mountains and lakes here in the Puget Sound. We would, go on long hikes together. Sujit absolutely loves hiking and climbing mountains. Sadly, we haven't been able to do as much of that recently due to some, health issues he's been having. But once he recovers, we hope to get back to our adventures. So we also love watching movies together. Sujit especially loves it because every time we go to the theater, like he gets a big bucket of popcorn, which he loves. And we also do a lot of the Rings movie marathon once a year. They're like our favorite movies. Yeah, his favorite character is Frodo and mine is Aragorn.
Very cool. I love those movies too.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Sean, what did you enjoy doing with your sibling and what do you enjoy doing together now?
So, excuse me. Growing up, one of Jamie's physical therapists would ride bikes. Lack of a better word, I can't think of it right now. Tandem bike, forgive me, a tandem bike. And Jamie could never balance on a just bicycle, single man bicycle. But this therapist, was like, hey, let's try it out. And, he had a pair of tandem bikes, brought one over, Jamie hopped on the back and away they went. And so it became, an activity. My parents ended up purchasing a tandem bike. And I just thought it was very unique. Jamie not having, could not balance on his own and steer the bike, but he had no issue matching my balance. So we were stable and steady going down the road. So I thought that was very, very, very unique, but just the ability to be able to match my balance. And we take turns, he's pedaling, no issue, but just some sort of lack of, I don't know whether it be, from, missing the synapses gap or what, but just something from him trying to do it individually, but then you just put him on the tandem and it was like night and day. And nowadays he has a recumbent trike that he rides on his own that he likes to do, he likes to tool around the block with. So, but I'd say that was probably a big activity for us growing up. But now that we're a little bit older, I would say spending time at camp. I'd say I don't want to solely speak for him, but I can say with reasonable confidence that that's both our place of peace up there in Lake Ontario at the camp. So we really enjoy spending our weekends and our summers up there now.
Very cool. Very cool. And I envy you that tandem bike. That sounds like so much fun. And Debra, what did you enjoy doing with your sibling and what do you enjoy doing together now?
So my brother has 4 female identifying siblings. So he got dragged with us on every ridiculous errand, whether he wanted to go or not. He spent a lot of time in like thrift stores, like makeup places, like all of the things that you would expect like an older brother to be having to do at the mercy of 4 or of 3 younger female siblings who like want to go do weird things, going to the library, right, like regular errand things. So we did that a lot as a kid. And like, we grew up in my mom's a Montessori preschool teacher, was a Montessori preschool teacher. So we like do everything as like one unit. We go everywhere as one unit. So like if we have to go grocery shopping, 1 unit. If we're going to Target, 1 unit. If we're going to thrift store, 1 unit. But like, of course, on like an autistic schedule. So like the same things every week in a routine, which is super useful in a family of 7. And the same thing, we do the same things now. We just have added our own children to it. So now like wherever like his nibblings want to go, like that's where we're going. If they want to go to the Arboretum, that's where we're going. If they want to go spend ridiculous amounts of time in Target or in like an HEB, which is like Texas's like flagship grocery store, like we hang out a lot in those places, or we spend a lot of time like in the house doing like sticker puzzles, like sticker mosaic things, or like, you know, funny little family weird around the table sort of stuff. We just like hang out in one room together usually.
Very nice. Very nice. Alan, same question for you. What did you enjoy doing with your sibling, and what do you enjoy doing together now?
I used to read to him a lot. We used to play together. I kind of forget some of the things we did. I just need to give some background information here. My mother died at the age of 35 when I was 9, and Bruce was 5, and our relationship at that point sort of became disrupted. So some of my older memories, it's hard to remember exactly what we did, but I remember we played a lot. He loved spending time outside, and he still does. He was always interested in being in the woods and being around trees and watching birds, and that's something he still does today. And when we get together with him, members of my family now, we often take him out to the lake, or we do things outside. One thing I remember pretty clearly, though, as a kid was I would stand on one side of the kitchen and I would turn the kitchen light on, and he would stand on the other side and turn it off and laugh hysterically. And then he would turn it back on and I would turn it off. And we had that little game we played. And you know, that was always fun. It was always fun to see how much he laughed doing something like that.
That does sound like fun. Shehime, what did you enjoy doing with your sibling, and what do you enjoy doing together now? And also, what a beautiful cat you have.
Oh, he's a monster. It's funny actually that he's joined right now because Yasmin hates cats. And I've always loved cats. So the fact that Harry's part of this right now is interesting. Yasmin and I, when we were younger, we've always played games together. We've always done puzzles. We've always done board games. She's always been fearless. It's interesting. I think as she's gotten a little older, I'm 50, she's 48, and Shergul's 53. So we're older, and I'm the middle child. So it's interesting, Debra, what you said, because we do also, growing up, we always moved as a unit. Everything we did was as a unit. So I completely understand that. But the fearlessness meant that she was horseback riding, which she still does. She skied when she was younger. She doesn't like to do it quite as much now because, you know, it's cold, it's icy, boots hurt, all that stuff. But she skied a lot. So there was, that was enjoyable. She loved to shop, which she still does. And I think the difference now is that because she's able to communicate, we are able to do more of what she's interested in. So when we are shopping, she's actually saying what she wants, which has been a huge difference, because we used to think that she liked, for example, snowmen or penguins or something like that. But what she was trying to say was that she felt frozen in her autism, and we just interpreted it in a completely different way. And so that's, I think, part of the regret, is that we didn't know that that's how she was trying to express herself through these words. And so we fixated on the actual object. And one of the first things that happened once we started communicating through typing was this complete purge of her bedroom. and a complete change of everything that she wanted around herself and how she wanted to dress and how she wanted to present herself. So that was fascinating. That to me is great. So now, of course, I still love to go shopping, and now it's just fun because I've got someone who wants to come with me and look for some of the fun stuff. So yeah, I would say that our biggest thing that she and I love to do is we love to travel. We really do love to travel and travel together. And one of our dearest friends is on this, is attending actually from Italy. And we travel with this friend, with Camilla, and her siblings. And it's been wonderful.
Thank you. And if you saw me laughing, it's because I can't tell you how many families I've heard from where when somebody learns how to type, the first thing that happens is their bedroom gets painted a different color or something that people didn't realize until they could tell them.
Yeah, complete purge of her room was unbelievable.
It's such a classic thing. So wonderful to be able to communicate. Absolutely. Yeah. Shergul, same question. What did you enjoy doing with your sibling and what do you enjoy doing now?
Yeah. So I used to love, and still do, doing all kinds of games and activities, puzzles. She was really good at memory cards. So we used to play a lot of that for a while when we lived together, which was in Lincoln, Mass, only about 5 or 6 years before I went to college. We enjoyed playing basketball outside. We used to go skiing together. So there was a lot of fun memories and things that we used to do. As far as now, I guess, first and foremost, I do enjoy typing with her. So she resists it quite a bit, but I think she's quite good and very communicative, and her thoughts on my children and/or as Shehime says, her evolving taste and what are her interests, and finding out about that is always interesting. I also like reading what she's been writing with other people. I do not enjoy shopping with Yasmin, and I never have. But I also don't really enjoy shopping with my wife, my other sister, or anybody. I like e-commerce, click a button and it shows up. I spent many years working in e-commerce companies, but also Yasmin was quite a klepto when she was a kid, and she still hasn't kicked that habit, Yazi. It's not good. So we got to watch you. So shopping with you has not been fun.
Uh-oh, the secret is out. On to question 3. Susmita, what did you struggle with?
Yeah, so initially, especially as a kid, I struggled a lot with understanding what autism is. I also struggled with acceptance of Sujit's condition. I would feel sad and frustrated that my friends, younger siblings were all, quote unquote normal, but my brother was different. And I never really talked to my friends about him. And even when my friends asked about him, I never really told them any details or that he's autistic. And I think I was just embarrassed about it. And I always also used to feel very guilty because I always wanted a sibling, and but the sibling I got wasn't who I expected, and I just didn't know how to kind of reconcile with that. But things changed when I moved out of the house to go to college. And I would say absence definitely does make the heart grow fonder. And the one thing I miss most when I moved out was my bond with Sujit. And when I went back home during my holidays, I realized how much Sujit missed me too. He would not leave my side the entire time I was home. And that made me realize even though our bond is not like a regular sibling bond, it is still very strong because of how unique it is. So now I have a much better understanding of what autism is, and more importantly, I have a much better understanding of who Sujit is as a person. I'm absolutely proud of all his accomplishments and everything he has done and overcome. And I talk about him to anyone who will listen and brag about how intelligent and talented he is.
He truly is. I know Sujit, and everything you say, absolutely, yes. I feel the same way about him. He's so talented.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Sean, what
Wait a
did-
minute,
Oh.
before you go on, I just want to let everybody know that Sujit is the treasurer of AUTCOM. So there's that.
yes. And with that, Sean, what did you struggle with?
I would say from an early age, it was just the whole understanding of what autism entailed. You know, as it wasn't until I was, you know, teenager that I really started understanding, I guess, you know, what was actually impacted by someone with autism. And, you know, at that point in time, my brother was becoming a little bit verbal, you know, be able to speak some of his sentences. Probably the biggest thing that I struggled with was after I had a little bit of grasp of, you know, understanding of autism, was the seeing that how badly he wanted to communicate. You know, you could see it in his typing, you know, whether he was typing fiercely or if, you know, he was typing jovially, you know. But I'd say I struggled with that for a while. But then it was probably I think it was the light writer when I came through, and it was a typing machine with a dual face screen. And he used to be able to type on that, and it would read back your sentence. So he'd type it, and then he'd hear what he typed out, you know, read back, and then I thought that was a cool piece. And so that helped me understand, you know, more of his emotion. And, you know, because being nonverbal, you know, you kind of see about where he was trying to go with his feelings. And eventually, you know, that I'd say was a big piece in him becoming more verbal, because there was just a day he just shut off the communication on it and just started reading his own sentences back. And I'd say I struggled with the understanding at a young age, but then you know, as going through the growing pains and starting you know, becoming more familiar with what was actually taking place.
Thank you. Debra, same question. What did you struggle with?
If I were going to be really honest, the thing that I struggled with and still struggle with is like an ableist society, an ableist, capitalist driven society that doesn't see the inherent value in my brother or make a place for him to be who he is in this world, and like tags his self-worth or like his general worth to his productivity. That makes me angry, to say it lightly. That stuff drives me so banana hammocks and like makes me want to burn down the world, which is probably what I'm trying to do with my research, in a sense. So I mean, I don't know, maybe because like we went to a school that had a lot of like other people with like a wide range of disabilities. To me, the issue was always like, clearly these human beings are built this way. There's not a lot of things you can do to change the way that human beings with disabilities are built. There are, however, a lot of things that we can change in society to make it a lot more accessible and accommodating. Why we continue to not do those things is incredibly frustrating to me, and I don't understand why this is so challenging. Or even just to shift the paradigm of to be like, you know, like, why can't this be accessible? Why can't everybody just caption things? Why can't we all just learn basic sign language? Why can't we just make a place and be nice humans so that human beings who are disabled can just live the lives that they need to be living? I don't know. I don't know why I don't know why it's hard. I'm going to start ranting, so I'm going to stop there.
Such a mic drop. Thank you for that. And I'm trying to burn the world down too with my writing. So we'll burn it down and build a better one. Alan, how about you? What did you struggle with?
Well, after Debra's comments, I'm tempted to just say ditto. I think Yeah, I think the issues that we struggled with as a family were really systems issues. There was no education for kids with disabilities back then. As I said, I was one of 5 young boys. I think the pressure of raising 5 young boys was really hard on both my parents, but particularly my mother. You know, having one brother who was autistic, I think may have contributed some to that stress, but I would say it was more the systems issues and getting support for Bruce that were really the bigger struggle. Yeah. After, and just in a little bit more background information, after my mother died, my brother moved into a group home, a large group home. When he was 18, my father and my stepmother had him admitted to a large, very horrible institution where he spent a number of years. So that's what we struggled with, getting him the support that he needed. Now, he's no longer in the institution. He has been out of there for some time.
Good, good. I figured when you said for a number of years that he was no longer there, but thank you for.
Yeah, and that whole getting him out of the institution led to a lot of conflict within our family as well. So that was a struggle.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of complex stuff there, but I'm so glad he's not there. Absolutely. Shehime, what did you struggle with?
I think that first of all, thank you, Debra, for saying what you did, because yes, I think some of the struggles personally was I'm the middle child, so there was this attention. Shergul is the only boy. Yasmin had her needs, so I kind of and I'm not a wallflower, so I had to make noise, and I did. So there was that part. I think that one of the hardest parts for me was we grew up in Italy, and then we moved to the States when we were still in middle school, early sort of elementary school. But there was this difference between the United States and Italy, and there was a level of acceptance amongst our friends in Italy that still exists to this day, that makes it comfortable and easy. And Yasmin is very much involved and very much a part of it, and it's just a natural, seamless experience. Whereas in the United States, it hasn't been the case. And so it was very difficult to have friends come over. For one thing, we didn't live near our school, so there was just a transportation problem. But also there was sort of the explanation of, you never know if it was going to be a tantrumy type of a day or not. And so it was just easier to not share Yasmin with everyone. Whereas in Italy, it was not a problem. It was easy. And that it has in some ways continued. Just our friendships that we have with you know, our friends in Italy makes it such that it is just, it's easy. So that would be my say.
Wow, big cultural difference.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people, some of the older Italian friends might continue to baby her, but I think that's more of a generational thing rather than anything else.
Shergul, same question. What did you struggle with?
I think Shehime captured a lot of it well. I think Debra did as well. I mean, I think, you know, I think part of it was this knowing that she had been very verbal and communicative before. And then people in Italy who saw her that way obviously understood that transition. You know, for me, I guess I didn't really understand that this was necessarily autism. I knew that she had a high fever and had epilepsy, but one doesn't know if that had caused more permanent brain damage. but I guess personally, the struggles and challenges were very similar to Shehime's around kind of having friends over or being out for dinner and in places where, there were certainly tantrums and challenges that she would put forth. But, as Deborah said, that wasn't her issue. That was more society's ability and our ability to kind of roll with it. And I was always super impressed by how my mom was able to handle everything and be so kind of calm and above it all. Conversely, I think the rest of us were not as good at it.
Thank you. Now, question 4. We're back to Susmita again. What did help or would have helped your relationship with your autistic sibling?
Yeah, so I really truly understood who Sujit is as a person once we learned about facilitated communication and he started typing to communicate. Like he started expressing his thoughts and feelings, showing us just how intelligent he is and how much he knows, like his vocabulary and knowledge of so many subjects. Like I was absolutely blown away. And I wish that Sujit had the opportunity to type sooner. And now it's like no longer like a one-sided communication. Like Sujit and I have like lengthy conversations with each other. I can understand his thoughts and feelings. When he gets angry with me, like he can tell me how I messed up. And if there is something he wants to do with me, like he can let me know. So that has truly been like a game changer for us.
Beautiful. Thank you. Sean, what did help or would have helped your relationship with your autistic sibling?
Facilitated communication as well. Like before I understood the fundamentals of FC, I can only just interpret through Jamie's, emotions or, his actions, whether it be frustrating or, pleasurable, it was, you could tell when he was angry because, you'd start pinching it and you'd know, and, but facilitated communication, that definitely opened up the gates in our communication, and information started flowing, be able, between us. And like I said, it started with just that little laminated QWERTY layout of a keyboard, and still got a couple of those kicking around in the parents' house. But it started with that, and that was big groundbreaking, as far as being able to communicate with one another. And that progressed to I believe it was the Alpha Smart. It was kind of like an old like prehistoric tablet word processor, if you will. And he really started, typing vastly in that, and he was using that for, for schoolwork and stuff like that. And that was big to, see him being able to communicate, much more freely and express his thoughts, his emotions, and, his interests. And then, like I said, after that, the light writer came on, and I think that was a big kick into him, becoming more verbal, because it had dual facing screens, so as he typed, he could see what he was typing out, and the other display you could see standing across from him. And then after he got done, he hit a key and it verbalized a statement. And like I said, I feel like that was big key, because after just the repetitiveness, I don't know whether it was the repetitiveness or what, but something clicked. And then one day he just turned off the speech function and started typing out and speaking as he went, and it was just something else to see. And I'd say that was probably the biggest change, as far as, increasing progression for him becoming verbally.
Thank you. And communication really is so fundamental to just everything.
It is.
Deborah, what did help or would have helped your relationship with your autistic sibling?
I think presuming competence really transforms your brain to be like, I don't know, just they're my sibling. So being like, you are my sibling, siblings do this thing. I'm also the benefit of being like a younger sibling. So like I have a reflex to just assume that they're just doing what they do and like they know what they're doing. And for our relationship, it's always been really strong. Like I'm a bulldog when it comes to my brother, and as with all of my other siblings. So if like you have a problem, the problem is not with my family member, the problem is with you. And like I think that has helped me moved through a lot of things that would have produced problems, because like at the center of my existence is always like they're my sibling, and like we can tussle, and I'm always going to be on their side at all times. Like there is nothing that they can do that would make me change who they are. And I'm always going to assume, because they're also my sibling, that like, and we grew up in a Montessori household and with an autistic parent, that like, you're going to do what you're going to do. And like, I'm going to support you in doing what it is that you need to do. And then if we need to like make accommodations, change what we're doing, have like a conference about like what process we're moving through, or preview the plan that we're doing, then that's what we did. And I benefited because like a lot of my time from, being a small human to, being 15 was in an environment that involved a lot of disabled humans. So my scope of understanding of like how people exist and show up, and like how you should exist in harmony with these other people in other ways and other forms of being, is you just treat everybody with respect. You presume competence. You don't need to turn it into a situation where you're savioring somebody, or you're the hero because you're doing what needs to be a responsible community member, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. That's, yeah. So that's what has always helped me. And I think that like when I've explained that to other people, they're like, oh, okay, that's why you exist in a world that like you just move like everything that your sibling is doing is what they should be doing, because it is what they should be doing. If they're in your way, you should move. That's, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Alan, same question. What did help or would have helped your relationship with your autistic sibling?
Well, I think the thing that helped most was my mother's emphasis on establishing that good relationship with them. And she really, and I mean, she didn't have a lot of expectations for me in terms of, daily support for Bruce, other than, just be a good brother to him. And I think she had very good insight around that. One of the other things that helped was our extended family. My paternal grandparents lived 2 houses away. They were very supportive. My mother had 8 older siblings, all of whom lived not far from us, and were very, very helpful. When my mother got sick, my brother Bruce went to live with her sister, my Aunt Roberta, for a while, and they were incredible. They had 5 children themselves, and just did everything for Bruce. Her husband Art would come home at the end of the day. He'd park in the garage, walk into the basement, and whistle, and my brother Bruce would come running down the basement steps and run across the basement and jump into Art's arms, usually almost knocking him over. Anyway, so I think that was really, having a supportive extended family, especially as my mother got sick and after she died, was really, really helpful. And the other thing that would have helped was, some kind of education, meaningful education and inclusive education, and some kind of communication system, which at that time he didn't have.
Thank you. Shehime, what did help or would have helped your relationship with your autistic sibling?
I think what would have helped is obviously communication, the facilitated communication. That would have been that would have changed everything in our past. But what did work for us was really my mom, and her ability to work with Yasmin and still be with us and give us the language to speak to her and to help her. So I think that their sort of therapeutic approach to working with Yaz, that enabled both my brother and myself to go to college, go to grad school, go live in different places and work. But I think that at the same time, it tied us to wanting to be near here. That ultimately, I think both Shergul and I have always known that our roots were wherever Yasmin is. And so that's why we're here. This is where it is. So yeah.
Thank you. Shergul, what did help or would have helped your relationship with your autistic sibling?
So I would definitely say that if there'd been better, I guess, medical professional advice, there was a lot of ignorance and or kind of passing of the buck and misdiagnosis, and she wound up in a few different, let's call them vaguely, school systems. So I agree, she missed out on higher education, which still is an opportunity for her. I think that it's a big regret to not have found facilitated communication much earlier, especially potentially the years that we were living together. I think a struggle or internal with myself is always sort of a lack of time dedicated to Yasmin. And I think, between work and having 3 kids and that's just a complicated side part of it. But I think going forward, being able to type with her and having more willingness from her, I know she's listening. She's very good at it, but she runs out of energy really quickly. So you get a couple of bursts from it. So, certainly for her to be, I think she's very funny. She's got an amazing wit and she speaks languages and she can write poetry. But I know that there's a ton of time component. Time's the most precious commodity I don't have a lot of. So being able to get to, maybe it's, I think it's great with an iPhone where you can see the word quickly and type it. You start typing a word and then she's getting really good at that. So if there's more things that facilitated typing can get to having her communicate faster, is always going to be a great thing that they'll be great going forward.
Thank you. That brings us to our last question. And we're back to Susmita. How has your perspective on autism changed over time as the relationship with your sibling has developed?
Yeah, so initially as a kid, as I mentioned before, I didn't have a clear understanding of what autism really is. Back then, and the place where I was, there was a tendency to categorize all neurodivergence as being quote unquote abnormal or hopeless. And I unfortunately started believing that having an autistic sibling was something to hide or be embarrassed about. And as I grew older, I realized how wrong my perception was. And especially as I interacted with Sujit more and more, he's always been very loving and very happy and will always greet you with a smile and a hug. He has a very optimistic and spiritual view of life, which is very unique. He's also very intelligent and talented. He draws paintings, he writes poems, and he can also solve algebraic equations, which is pretty, badass. So I know there's a good amount of media representation of people with autism. And sadly, I feel that there's a lot of stereotyping involved there and a tendency to paint all people with autism with a broad brush. And I honestly feel that each person is unique in their own way, and they each have their own individuality and superpower. And my relationship with Sujit has really helped me understand and appreciate that.
Thank you. Sean, how has your perspective on autism changed over time as the relationship with your sibling has developed?
Well, our relationship has grown over time thanks to facilitated communication and just the overall support of I'm blessed with such a loving family. Between the strength of both my father and my mother, seeing the time and effort they've invested into making sure Jamie's been able to get to where he's got today. Like my very, very thankful for my mother, being able, the effort she has put in when he was in our public school system. She was always involved, and we had a pretty good inclusivity for our public school system at the time. And I had a very good group of friends. Jamie and I had a crossover. In middle school, we were in the school together for a year. In high school, we were there for a year before he graduated. And my friends, they'd always say what's up, shake his hand, high five him in the hall. Everyone was good. And I'd say just becoming more understanding, that they are just an individual just like us. They just got to communicate in different forms. And I'd say one of my perspectives on facilitated communication changed as I got more of an understanding of it. I started hearing all the skepticism surrounding it, saying that it's not the actual individual's thoughts, that it's the person supporting them that they're hindering, that they're the one that's controlling their output, if you will. And I always love a good story of an underdog, and I feel like my brother achieved that, because there's all these Ivy League doctors that were saying that, calling BS on facilitated communication, saying that, it's the supporter and, it's not the individual. And my brother, I feel, helped put that a little bit to rest when, my mother initially started supporting him at the wrist, and then progressed to just supporting him at the elbow. And it progressed to just stand behind him with a hand on his shoulder, and he was typing freely. So I'd say that was probably my biggest perspective that changed over time. It was hopefully some of the skepticism to facilitated communication can be put to bed, that it is the individual. They are trying to convey their own thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you. I've known several people who I have known from when they were supported to when they were independently typing, and the things they said and the way they said them never changed. And that, to me, that's all I need to be.
Yep, exactly.
Debra, how has your perspective on autism changed over time?
I think I've continue to gain a lot of respect for autistic human beings because of the consistent structural and systemic obstacles you keep having to face, all the while, I just with any I think civil rights movement, right? The amount of things that people with disabilities have to go through are the same things that Black people, female people, queer people have to go through all of the time. And it sucks that the world continues to suck. So my perspective on autism has developed in a way where it's just a constant amount of respect, and then a personally an awe, watching my daughter, who is less than 2, learn sign language and get real excited. It's going to make me cry. Get real excited to talk to my brother on the phone or on FaceTime, and have her be jazzed, and to come into a world and come into a being knowing that the respect, the understanding that this is your uncle, this is a person, this is the base level of respect, this is how we exist, this is how we move through the world, helps me feel at some point other people who don't have the privilege of having somebody disabled in their life will understand how they need to be changing themselves and working to change the world, so that they too can have the privilege of having disabled friends, disabled family members, disabled partners, disabled lovers, etc. Right? Like I think it's a very privileged existence, like autism included. Like I have autistic friends, I've had autistic partners, lovers, whatever, siblings. And I think like it's so interesting to me to look at people who don't have those experiences and who like live this life where they just like have only met people of one type of being, one type of existence in the world. That's sad to me. And I wish for them to have like more experiences to interface, because it sucks for you that you don't get to see the amazing existence that is having friends or family members who are autistic. Like the way that they exist in the world is completely different. For me, I think it's more comfortable, right? Like typically developing neurotypical people sometimes give me the icks. They're a little weird sometimes. And I find it a lot easier. And it's definitely because I'm an autistic sibling, but like people come at me all the time. They're like, you're very blunt, you're very direct. And I'm like, how should you be? Like, why is it that you want it to be in a different way? Like, I understand a lot of my autistic friends and my autistic siblings' perspectives because I struggle with the same things. And so the more that I have aged and the more that I see a relationship develop between my brother and my daughter, the more that I'm thankful that I have had the ability to exist in this life and persist in this life. And I get to introduce my kid to this life and like make sure that they are always making sure that the conversation and that other people in the world are treating disabled people with the respect that they deserve, particularly autistic people. Like you're not going to come out the side of your neck about autism or autistic people if I'm standing there, because I have all of the time in the world for that. I have all of the time in the world to correct you, to educate you, to tell you how you need to grow. And like, if that is what needs to get done to like change the world so that they can understand how I see autism, how I've lived in autism, how I've lived in a world of disability, like, cool. My daughter's going to be doing the same thing. That's how we ride. Yeah, I think it's made me more fierce and unapologetic in the way that I show up, and makes me like, if you have a problem with my brother, you're definitely going to have a problem with me. So I'm going to show up in whatever way that I show up, because if I'm the canary, if you're going to call out something, you're going to have an issue with me, you're definitely going to have a problem with them. Then you don't get access, right? Like you don't get access to this amazing human being. Even my husband, before we got married, and I know this is a long answer and I'm sorry, but like even before we got married, I made him go to like the autism conference, the International Meeting for Autism Research, spend time at the stakeholders meeting. I made sure he met with my autistic friends. Like he had to come really correct before he could meet my autistic brother and be in his personal space, especially because my brother is high support, nonverbal, and deaf, right? Like you have to meet the criteria before you can be involved in his life. And then like, it's a constant learning curve for him on how he needs to change his existence to make sure that we're constantly accessible and accommodating. For one, like I keep telling him, we're going to have a multi-generational household. At some point when my parents are not around, we're not going to go to a group home. We're not doing that. My brother's coming and living with me. So get ready, sir. And like, that wasn't a question. It was like, here's a notice for you to digest for however long it needs to digest until we do these things. And then slowly teaching him the ways that he needs to show up as a typically developing neurotypical human being that now has a disabled autistic person in their life, right? Like you have to change the way that you exist in this world, right? And it's been beautiful to see the way that he's changed, the way that he meets the needs to like grow our kids so that she can constantly be in my brother's life and interacting with him and making sure that like other people are constantly coming correct. And like what I know that is the way that it should be, because I recently had the privilege of going to the funeral services for Donald Triplett, who was the first person diagnosed with autism by Lee O'Connor in 1943. And to see the way that community showed up, to see the way that it wasn't just Donald Triplett's immediate family, but the way the extended family carried on that duty of care, that duty of responsibility for making sure that the world is showing up in the way that it needs to helped reaffirm my perspectives and my growth of like how I need to be making sure my kid grows to make sure that they're doing what they need to for other autistic people, including my brother in the world. Now I will stop talking. Sorry.
Thank you so much. And yeah, when I first read about Donald Triplett way back when Atlantic wrote about him, that was one of the big things I noticed was how much the community loved Donald, and that he wasn't just embedded in his family, like everyone knew him and loved him. And that's how it should be. Absolutely. So thank you for such a beautiful answer. Alan, how has your perspective on autism changed over time?
Well, I think, very early on, we accepted, and this was really unfortunate, what professionals told us, and that namely was that most of what made Bruce different was a severe intellectual disability. They used the R word back then. And I think, for the most part, we accepted that. We accepted the prognosis, although we did have those questions now and then, like, how did he know that? I mean, are we sure about that? He would just do things that would show an understanding that was inconsistent with the various diagnoses he had. I remember my Aunt Roberta, particularly, she would always question that and question, the results of the IQ tests and the circumstances under which they were conducted. I now know that autism is much more complex than that. It can't be reduced simply to an intellectual disability. I know about the motor issues involved and the sensory issues involved and the difficulty with interpersonal synchrony that people experience. And we know now that Bruce is indeed very smart. I think one of the other things was, the general perception, I think in the larger community, that people with autism really don't want to interact with other people. And I think most of us know that that's a huge mistake. One of the nice things that's happened over the last 20 years is that Bruce really got reconnected with his family, not only his siblings, but his half siblings as well, who had never met him as a child. They didn't meet him until they were all adults, my half siblings. But they've really made up for it. I mean, it wasn't their fault that they didn't know him, but they've just gone out of their way to connect with him. And the best times that Bruce has are when he spends time with his family, and that's his siblings and his half siblings. And he spends a lot of time doing that now. And it's really nice to see, and it's really nice to see how important that is. We pick him up at the group home where he lives, and they'll always tell us, well, he should be back by 9 o'clock because, he really likes to stay on his schedule. And no, that's not it. The staff need him. I mean, it's their need for a schedule. And we just say, yeah, we'll bring him back when he's ready to come back. Yeah, it's usually like midnight or 1 a.m. or something. So, because he's having such a good time. So anyway, yeah, I just, our perceptions, our family's perceptions, my perceptions of who Bruce is as an autistic person have just changed dramatically.
Thank you. Shehime, how has your perspective on autism changed over time?
I would say that, well, it has changed. I think the two basic tenets of it, that if you've met a person with autism, you've met one person with autism, and the concept of everybody, no matter what, wants to communicate. Those two sort of, that has changed a lot in how I not only perceive autism, but perceive people. I think that there is a movement away from, I would hope that there's movement away towards away from words like disability, like disabled, like the R word, into more inclusive language. I think the fact that we now talk about a spectrum, I think that you can talk about everybody as something, no matter who you are. We're functioning much more in a gray area versus black and white. And I would say there's, like Debra keeps pointing out, there's a hell of a lot more work to do. But at least for me, I'm becoming so much more aware of not just autism, of everyone, and that everyone has their thing, and it's the uniqueness. You can't group people together, you can't label people, you can't generalize it. Uniqueness is uniqueness, and there's no good or bad or value added to it. So that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. And Debra, yes, multi-generational households. Here we go. I know I'm ready. So, yep, that's that's where I am.
Thank you. And there are a lot of people that say that neurotypical is just an idea and there is no such thing as a neurotypical human being.
Exactly.
Like, everybody's unique in one way or another.
Yep.
Shergul, how has your perspective on autism changed over time?
So it's funny, my first probably memory of autism was watching the movie Rain Man and then thinking about Dustin Hoffman's character, for those who haven't seen it, and just thinking, basically how there was an element of genius and brilliance and just incredible smartness to autism. And then with Yasmin, I think there's a period where they were telling me she's autistic, and through actions like, I don't know, penguin or snowman or writing the words yes or stuff like that, you couldn't infer. I think we'd all be lying to ourselves that there was what emerged on the other end once we found facilitated communication. So there was almost a full circle. Like, I start off with Rain Man thinking autism is genius level people, and then when we now can correlate a lot of the symbols or words or code words that Yasmin was saying to actually very introspective and genius statements that came out after 20 years or more. So what I've then been surprised by is how much more you could, if she had limited herself to being kind of a snarky person with a couple sentences here and there, but this genius is somebody who can read a page of a book in like 2 seconds, and I don't know how she does it. She says you show her a newspaper, and next thing you know, she can type about it. So she's much smarter than Shehime and I, who have 2 Harvard degrees and a Stanford degree combined. I mean, she's much smarter, and so she's also, her real talent is in words and poetry. I know her art is beautiful, but her words are even better. So if we can get her to do even more, I think it correlates back to my first perception around genius. And again, I would agree that yes, no person is, every person's different, and there's no two forms of autism. But from where the question was my perception, I guess it went full circle and then much beyond. I think she could kick Dustin Hoffman's ass.
I agree with you. I know Yasmin through the AUTCOM board, and she's such an intelligent, articulate, elegant person. Absolutely. Also, I haven't said anything about Jamie, but I know Jamie as well, and he blows my mind all the time. He just, like, the words that come out of his mouth blow my mind because he's so smart and he's so insightful. He sees things that I don't see, and Yeah, thank you, everybody. We have gone through all the questions, and now I see that we have some questions in the Q&A. Oops, I opened it and then closed it. Let's see, where can I?
Max, I just want to,
Yes.
I just want to say that I don't know what happened to chat, and I apologize for that. But I know that I personally cannot access the Q&A as far as like typing my own questions, and I don't know if anybody else is having that problem. If you are having that problem, click on raise your hand, and we'll get to you.
Absolutely. And there were some questions I saw, but now I can't scroll back.
I'll read them to you. Oh,
Okay. Yeah, help us out. Give us a question.
some of them are under answered, even though they weren't answered.
Some of them, I saw some people typing. I saw that some of our panelists did answer them in type. So
okay, they did answer.
If any of those need to be brought out loud into the discussion, we can do that as well.
Well, here's one from Jamie, and I guess I just want everybody to hear it. He said, Sean, it's great to hear your memories. Were you afraid to talk to me before you could type with me? And I mean, Sean, you can read your answer, but I don't know if that's so you said sort of it was more so that I felt remorse.
I was just trying to open up the chat box.
It's under Q&A, not chat. And it's under answered, and you'd have to. Yes,
yeah, it was more so, you know, I didn't fully feel confident, and I didn't understand FC. So as far as I don't know, I felt like it was, I don't know if I felt bad of myself being able to, like, I didn't want to ask him a question because I know he'd understand it, or, you know, but not being able to relay his answer verbally to me. I felt, I don't know what, I don't want to say remorse, but it just, I can't draw my vocabulary here, but it was easier to communicate once I had a better grasp of FC, and I felt like we were more so flowing information, you know, because prior, without my understanding of FC, I felt like it was more like I was like a lopsided conversation. I felt like I wasn't giving him the fair chance, you know, of to be able to respond or, you know, participate. So I kind of felt like, you know, I felt like I was doing like a disservice. I don't know. I'm running out of words here, but it was much more easier to communicate with FC, because I felt like it was a, you know, balanced conversation, if you will, and it wasn't so just one-sided of me just, you know, feeding sentences.
Right. And then Amy McLeish asked, for those whose siblings use FC or other spelling methods, I'm wondering how the skepticism and controversy has affected your family and relationship with your sibling. So Shergul and Shehime both answered that. I don't know if you guys want to just reprise your answers, or if you want me to read them. It doesn't really matter.
I can jump in. I mean, I think the point was the skepticism or criticism of facilitated typing has certainly affected Yasmin externally from the household more so than internally. In other words, getting her workplace to accept it, the state of Massachusetts, you know, there's outside skepticism you can see, but internally it's only been helpful. In other words, it doesn't really matter if someone's skeptical. We're able to communicate with her. She's getting great thoughts out. This is a gift. I don't think we dwell on it affecting us internally. Just want it to be faster, and it can keep getting easier. We want to get to you know, a point where it sounds like, you know, Sean's at, where like you hold someone on the shoulder, and she's getting there. But yeah, I think we're trying to make up for lost time.
So my comment was in agreement that I wish that it was more accepted and expected in the way that sign language and Braille are just more understood as ways of communication or interaction. So I just wish that it was just in yet another way people communicate, just a normal thought process. As you know, Lisa, we've had the ability to go speak at different universities with Yasmin, and I get frustrated when I see sort of the next generation of teachers or people who are in occupational therapy or any of the therapies be skeptical of facilitated communication, or and just don't question the ability of people wanting to communicate. That I think is a struggle that I have. How it affects our family, it's great. We are able to communicate. I think that there's a sadness that there's others that might not ever get to communicate. We're lucky that we came to it late, but the fact that there might be others that don't, that's a sadness.
Right. Great. And then there's one from Sandi McClennon. Would the rest of you please comment? Oh, well, basically talking about what we're talking about. Please comment on how the skepticism and controversy about FC has affected you, your siblings, and your family. So Susmita, I guess you and Sean, and to some extent Alan, right? Experienced the skepticism. I know of one Jamie story that really tore at my heart when he was in Boston. Do you remember that, Sean?
Yep.
Want to tell it?
Well, I was say that was just kind of what I touched on earlier, and there was a bunch of the Ivy League doctors, and they were calling out BS, saying that it wasn't Jamie, that was all basically a crock, and it was my mother that was, she was the one that was, formulating his thoughts, and it wasn't truly Jamie. And it's again, Jamie, kind of put the kibosh on that and told him what's really happening, by showing the progression, being supported from the wrist, and then from being supported, just solely with a light touch underneath the elbow, and then to my mother progressing to just stand behind him with just a light touch on his shoulder, to then being completely independent and typing on his own, and reading back verbally what he wrote. And it kind of I felt like that was a good shutting the door on their skepticism. I feel like if you can't believe that, I mean, I don't know. I just don't know,
Susmita or Alan? Yeah, Alan.
I had a tough time convincing the professionals who worked with Bruce that, he might be competent and might be able to do things or communicate in ways that people didn't believe were possible. I think having Hugh Downs imply on national TV that I was a cult leader probably didn't help that very much. But ultimately, I think, we were able, I really delved into the research on it pretty heavily, and was able to point out some of the problems with the research that people were citing, and talk about some of the more positive research.
Yeah, my experience is everyone's kind of touched on that. I like to kind of shut off the noise and just type with Sujit, because I mean that's how we communicate, and that's how I learn about his thoughts and feelings. And yeah, it has been absolutely a game changer for us, and I will continue to use FC with him.
And I speak from my experience. I'm a speech pathologist, and I support people who type. And there have been many times when I disagreed with the things that they typed. I mean, there was a while back in 2016, I guess, and one of my clients was saying how he wanted Donald Trump to be president. because even back then, this client of mine recognized that Trump wanted to be a dictator, and my client felt that a dictator would keep things in line, and everything would run just like that. And we went round and round on this. So when I'm having these interactions and I'm not agreeing, it would be so easy for me if I really was influencing the typer to change what they're saying. And I've never done that. Are there any more questions? Let's see. Oh, Debra, this is from Sandi. It's just for you. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't. Okay, that's not a question for the group. So
I am a public academic at a public institution, running a public lab, working in a neurodivergent space. So I am beholden to the autistic community and sibling stakeholders to inform them about my research and to be an open resource for them to contact. So you can find me online anywhere. So if other people want to connect with me, I'm more than welcome.
Debra, did you say that you have an autistic parent as well?
Yes, undiagnosed, but very obvious.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which wasn't a thing that we realized until like far later in our life, where we were like, oh, your parent doesn't do this, like your autistic life isn't like this. That's interesting, because ours was, which is also like, I was talking to my sisters about the panel that we're on, and I was like, hey guys, here are the questions in case you want to answer them, and like, I can combine our answers and then provide them. But they were like, one of my sisters pointed out, they were like, your life is different categorically, because like you grew up with an autistic parent, which means your life just moves in a different way, because there's so many things that like are set up to make your life easier that you just take as like, that's the way it is. So it makes your siblings' life easier, but then your whole worldview is like, that's the way the world operates. Do you know what I mean? Like, routine is life. Do you know what I mean? Like, so our life has always had a tenor and a routine to it. And I brought that into my life now. So like my kid knows like Monday has a routine, Wednesday has a routine too. You know what I mean? Every day is a specific thing that we're doing. But that's also a very autistic thing that like I just carry over from my general life. So it's been very interesting to hear everybody's like experiences and opinions, because it's been very different than what I grew up in and went into. And like the other piece of that is like the intersectionality of it all, right? Like we were a Black family. Both of my parents are immigrants from 2 different countries. So they had very little in common in terms of their cultural backgrounds, both of which did not have a lot of like autistic people, or like that wasn't a word that was used in their lives, or like how it existed. And then growing up in Texas at a time where there was a lot of like disability services, but not in the same way. Like, it's a privilege for us to have learned ASL and signed exact English, because that wasn't a thing that most people in the country were doing, but it's really changed the way that we're able to relate to my brother. But it's super interesting to hear about everybody's struggle with the facilitated communication, because I remember the controversy that went down and thinking, oh wow, like it's great that we can just skirt that issue, because it would have compounded the issues that we already had with like being poor in Texas and being Black in Texas, and like all of these other things that like intersectionally can make existence with a disability so much harder.
Okay.
If I could add a comment, there are, generally speaking, 2 kinds of undiagnosed autistic parents, and one is the amazing parent that Debra had, and the other is I had a parent, he's now passed on. My father was definitely autistic, undiagnosed, and he went the other way. He had a lot of internalized ableism, and when I would express traits that were familiar to him that he had gotten punished for, he would punish me for, because he had been brought up that you don't you don't do this, you don't be this way. And it was a constant war in his life, and it's something that I've had to move past. So having an autistic parent is sort of a mixed thing.
I think for my life, it was significantly easier because we did have that community of the household that was like, everybody's got a disability here. You know what I mean? And so it was a lot less like shocking to have to rectify those two things. Not that it wasn't without its challenges, definitely with its challenges. Definitely do a lot of things that like my partner who grew up in a neurotypical or a typically developing household was like, why do you do things that way? And I'm like, doesn't everybody do things this way? So it's definitely challenging, but I think having an autistic sibling, like it definitely transformed the way that like I move through the world and what I see as like normal and commonplace, and like the way that I thought most people existed.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so Xenia Grant asked, Debra, what countries did your parents come from?
So my mom is Sri Lankan and my dad, Tamil Sri Lankan, and then my dad is Igbo Nigerian. So both of those cultures and ethnicities did not, at the time when we were growing up, didn't have a lot of experience or awareness around autism or like language around that. Not that it wasn't happening, it was definitely happening. We just didn't have language of that, and the way that it was not treated, but like the way that you move through life with somebody who had a disability wasn't the way that American people were moving through life during the disabilities. And as Alan pointed out, like our family got the benefit of like existing near the enactment of ADA and like the transformation of the access that a lot of people with disabilities were given, and a lot of the like services that families were given in addition to that. But like to that end, I've also been back to Sri Lanka to see what it's like to be, and I have family members who work with autistic people in Sri Lanka. So I've gotten to see the services and see the differences between how autistic humans who are high support are able to access certain services, what's been provided for them, and like how that changes across the globe, which has been very interesting as a human being.
We have a question from Judy, also for Debra. Have you included any autistics as co-researchers and collaborators in designing and conducting the research, posing the questions to investigate, etc.?
So I'm very fortunate to have a group of friends that are autistic and a group of like human beings who have no problem telling me about my research and what's going on. A lot of my research questions are also driven by the autistic community. So, and like what my needs are, right? So like when I started looking at cannabis use in autism and the why so many high support families were turning to cannabis use as a intervention for things that were not being met with like medications that were coming from these fancy Ivy League doctors. That was like the place that I had to go was in the autistic community. And then because I was getting a PhD in neuroscience, I was like, oh, there's gotta be data for this somewhere. Turns out no. And then that set me on my course of being like, okay, if my brother is high support and nonverbal and deaf, like if I provide cannabis, or if my parents provide cannabis, or if that's a viable resource and something goes wrong, I need to be able to, like, we need some sort of communication to have that, make sure it's safe, right? And so like a lot of my work since then has been around like, what do we know about this system that cannabis is acting on? Why is it something that so many autistic people are using as a medical intervention? How can we make it safer for people to access? What should autistic people have in terms of the data that's available? And then I also use resources for like my, I do a lot of human participant research. So there are like boards you can boards of autistic people who you can ask to review your research for you that are provided for by different autistic run organizations that you can have them review your work, which once I get my money and I can do these things, or like that's in the process of like creating my research workflow, is like making sure that my research is in line with what the autistic community wants and does not develop a narrative that will negatively impact their livelihoods. And to make sure that like neurotypical people know what they should be doing, right? Less changing autistic human beings or neurodivergent beings to be more neurotypical. That's like not a thing that I do and not a thing that I'm interested in, but instead like how can neurotypical people be less terrible?
I love it. Sounds like what you're describing sounds sort of like a second layer of peer review. That's just beautiful.
It's a responsibility. Like you can't again, like being disabled, being Black and being queer and being female helps me understand the ways that I need to approach the autistic community, because it's the same ways that you would approach those identities, right? So like I cannot act upon a community because that's incorrect, right? I must act with the community. I must move at the speed of trust. So if I don't have trust of the autistic community and I don't have their buy-in, I have no business doing what I think I should be doing as research.
There's another mic drop. Yes.
Yeah. There's a question from Paul Bakeman. Can anyone comment on the connection between autism and OCD? Do many experience both? That's that. I don't know if that's a sibling question or if it's, you know,
that might be out of our scope a little.
I would just say that in my experience, every single person on this earth has a level of OCD in them. It's just what is going to trigger it. So I think that OCD just is, whether it's through your thought patterns, through your actions, through your routines, through your whatever it is. I just put OCD as like, yeah, everyone's got it to some extent.
We know that from a neuroscientist perspective, we know that they are a common co-occurring condition, right? So a lot of people who have autism also have OCD. Do we know the neuromechanisms that contribute to that connection? No, same reasons that we don't know why so many people with epilepsy develop autism and why so many people with autism also have like a bidirectional relationship with epilepsy. We know that there's something happening in the development of the brain and the way that neurons, synapses, and circuits are connecting. We're just not entirely sure how that may be different in neurodivergent people, particularly those who have these other co-occurring conditions, right? Because we know, at least from a neuroscientific perspective, like if you're autistic, that's one type of brain. If you have ADHD, that's one type of brain. If you have autism and ADHD together in one person, that brain is different than these two other brains, and they're not like additive. They're just like completely different in terms of like the way the brain is processing information and like the activity in different regions.
But Deborah, nature versus nurture. I'm wondering, because I work mostly with non-speaking autistics, and I'm wondering if one of the reasons that they have OCD is because they have so little control over their lives, being non-speaking and not having, you know, those who don't have a way of expressing themselves. And I'm wondering if is it a co-occurring condition, or is it exacerbated by that lack of control? I don't know.
You can definitely do both, right? Like there's never, like with autism, there's never just one thing happening at once. That's what we know for sure. So there's definitely room for multiple explanations for many things. And that, I think, at least as a researcher and a sibling, I think that's what makes it so exciting for me. It's like I'm able to spend time in both worlds thinking about these things and really informing my research in a way that other autism researchers who don't have this connection and don't have access to this community or refuse to have it, to get involved in these communities, are missing out on.
Mhm. Okay, and Xenia said she finds similarities between cerebral palsy and autism. Yeah, I don't know if anybody wants to.
Well,
Direct-
they are in the same general category. Both are developmental disabilities.
All right.
But beyond that, I don't know any more about the connection, but they are generally lumped together diagnostic categorically.
Mhm. So I think we've come to the end. And before you click off, hang on. I just want to tell you that we are going to be showing this, or we've recorded it. We're going to be putting it on a YouTube channel for everyone to see. And so if you have friends or loved ones who weren't able to see it because, you know, they have lives, we'll be sending you a link to it. And I promise you that we will do it this time. There was a problem with the second webinar and we weren't able to do that, but we're going to get right on it. But I want to thank every one of the participants and their families for participating in this. And you made it so wonderful. And I think we all can agree that we have a better understanding of the autistic person in our lives. So thank you again. And I'll say goodbye. Please, before we go, please join AUTCOM. It's only $10 a year for autistics. And we do wonderful things like this webinar. So please join AUTCOM. And I'll say goodbye on behalf of AUTCOM. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
That was lovely.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.